If you want to catch the big bass, you gotta muscle up, soldier. Put on some weight. Sir, yes, sir. Now drop and give me 20. Sir, yes, sir. What's going on, guys? Let me get this one out of here. Just being a little crazy here tonight. Yeah, we're taking a look at the latest and greatest from Lunkerhunt. This is the Combat Frog. So right off the bat, of course, tying into that name, you have these military-inspired finishes. This one's very cool. That's called the Zulu finish. And I have two others here that I'd like to show you tonight. This one here, while not very military-inspired looking, this one is called Cane. And actually, of all the finishes that they have, I like this one the most. It's kind of like an off mustard color with ever so slight, to me, like a hint of green. And I just really, really like that one a lot. And then, of course, we have the classic fatigues color, kind of that army woodland camo green. And this one is called Foxtrot. Left this one in the package here. I have fished them. I just put it back in because I wanted to show you guys something. And Lunkerhunt did this on their previous iteration, their smaller frog, which is just called the Lunkerhunt Lunker Frog. Their packaging is, of course, we could see it from this side, but you can see it from the other side. And I really, really like this, especially on topwater lures, because this is what gets you as the the angler walking in the store. You're gonna see this color. You're gonna be like, "Oh, dude, check it out, sweet! It's like a an army frog." But this is marketing. What we're interested in is the bottom. We're fishing, right? We want to know, what are the fish gonna see? What are the fish gonna strike? Unless this thing is upside down, this is what the fish see, right? So I like that Lunkerhunt has done this on their lures. They show you both sides of the lure. It just makes a lot of sense. Now let's take it out. Before I do that, specs on the lure, guys: 65 millimeters. That equates to 2.5 inches, and we're looking at 3/4 of an ounce. So this is a nice hefty frog. You can cast this guy really, really well. Let's take him out. Again, I've been fishing all three of these. I'll be rolling in some clips of a couple fish I caught, but I just want to put him back in, show you guys this packaging. Alright guys, let's take a look at these colors. This is the Zulu. Black on the bottom. Alright, and what I was going for here is I wanted to get one that had a maximum impact in terms of stained water or at night to cast the darkest silhouette, so that's why the black. The Foxtrot, which you just saw, which has the cool kind of army color on the top, and then a very natural color on the bottom. This one is meant to be their natural offering. It's most like a normal frog with the white and a little bit of the kind of off brown yellowish there. And then lastly we have this Cane, which is kind of the same color all around. Has this kind of leopard pattern there, and the bottom is just that solid kind of off yellowish mustard color. Alright, so there's our perspective if we were a fish. And we have a little bit of everything. Natural, kind of a loud pungent color, and a very piercing dark color. And that should cover all your conditions out there on the water. Next, let's take a look at this compared to last year's model, which was a very, very popular, very successful Lunkerhunt Lunker Frog, which is just a little bit smaller. So let's grab, here's the original. And if you have one of these, you may be asking, do I need to get the larger one? And I guess need is all relative, but let's compare them side by side, because really the difference is size. The Combat Frog, they're giving it this kind of pattern to tie in with the name, but also the combat is in maybe, heavier duty or a larger presentation, something like that. So the Lunker Frog was a 1/2 ounce, and this one again is 3/4 of an ounce. So right off the bat, you're going to get a little bit of a longer cast, or actually a decently longer cast. I really can hoist this guy really, really well. He loads up the rod very nicely. And let's take a look at that size difference. Okay, it's not massive, but you can definitely see on the sides here the body is flailed out It's just, overall, it's a little bit longer, it's a little bit wider. It definitely casts a larger silhouette in the water. I don't think that if a fish is going to hit this, he'll probably hit this. It's not like it's a frog that's twice the size. It's not like absurdly large, but it definitely carries a little bit more mass to it. Taking a look at those legs, they're actually identical. There's no change here in the legs. It's just a carryover piece. So the bodies are different size, but the legs, they're just reusing those. And that's good because these legs kick really nicely in the water. Another thing about this one, guys, is that, and it's interesting because on their site, they say that because it's so hollow and it has such a big air cavity that it sits high in the water, and it actually does the exact opposite. And I don't fault them for this. I don't think it's a bad thing, but their marketing is just, I feel, a little bit incorrect. If this is the water line right here, it doesn't sit high on top of the water. These are weighted in back, okay, and that weight there is for casting distance, and it's also to make the lure right itself. So if you were to cast it upside down, it wants to always flip over on its side. I'll tell you from fishing these for a few weeks, some frogs, they have a tendency to always kind of fall on their back, and sometimes they don't want to flip over. Not these. Every once in a while, but I'd say probably 80–90% of the time they land correct and they stay on that side. But getting back to how it sits in the water, if this is the water line, it sits like this. The head kind of points not straight up, but just at about an angle like that, and that's what's happening below the water if my finger is the top of the water line. And I like that. I prefer that. It's giving the fish a whole kind of, it's not, sometimes the fish are not dedicated to that topwater bite, and if you have something that's really floating high on the surface, I notice there's days that just won't breach it. Well, of course this is a topwater lure, but it really sinks down into the water. The body comes down, a little bit over an inch, and then these legs are hanging down there, and they're kind of, twitching and just moving around. So I like the fact that, and identical to a real frog. Real frogs don't hover on top of the water like this. The head is up and the body falls, down like that, ready for it to kick off and swim. So that's how it sits in the water, and I really, really like that. I think it's great. It just makes sense that if a fish was coming from underneath, it's already swallowing the lure as it's approaching the surface. It doesn't actually have to crack the surface to engulf it, which it probably will. But you'll see, I hope you'll see, on my hack cam, it was a bit of a far cast. I had a good fish. It was about 4.5 pounds, and he never even caused a ripple on the surface. He literally just slurped it from below, never bothering the top. And that was largely in part due to how much of the lure hangs below the surface. So I think that's a really good thing. The next thing that I'd like to show you guys, and this is a very, very important feature, right? This channel here, and what I try to push is this whole keeping it real thing. I look for things that are different, things that are innovative and unique, and truly beneficial to the fishermen, past all the marketing and the BS. And we have one here in the combat frog. So next, let me show you this excellent feature. I'm going to line these two up, and I want you to take note of something. All right, so let's line the ties of the hooks. Okay, focus your attention on the one on my right, and look at the point of the hook and the direction it's pointing in. Okay? Now move your gaze to the left and look at the combat frog. Again, their eyes and the line ties are all lined up. Look at the point and the angle of the hook on the combat frog. A little bit of a steeper angle, right? This is something, and it's not accidental. They are calling your attention to it in the marketing. They've done something which I don't know why it hasn't been done before. They're using a different hook configuration here, and this is an awesome feature because if you guys have frog fished for any length of time, you're going to miss some in frog fishing, right? That's just part of the game. The way they explode on it and everything else, a lot of times we miss them. And one part of it is that, of course, these hooks are always protected, and the frog has to be hit and compressed to expose the hooks and give you a hook set. Now, last year's frog was ultra soft and ultra compressible, and this year's frog, I'm happy to say, is no different. Very, very soft rubber. Takes almost no effort. And you setting a hook with some braid is going to just flatten this thing like a pancake. But even so, look at the angles of those hooks. This makes absolute sense. You have a hook that is pointing more towards the sky, more towards the roof of the mouth. So when this lure gets compressed, boom, that bad boy is pointing as vertical as I have ever seen a frog hook. All right, let's compare it to the other one. Boom. All right. Now, it's not to say that you can't hook them. Of course you can. Of course you can. You know, every frog I've ever used has had kind of the same angle to these hooks here. And, you know, it's fine. But I've missed some strikes. I've missed some good fish. And it just stands to reason, if you can open up that gap, if you have a wider bite here on your hook, you're probably going to stab a few more fish. You're going to hook up with a few more than you would on a lesser hook that's pointing more straight in this direction than up towards the roof of the mouth. So this is a tremendous feature, and if nothing else, if you guys are on the fence, I would suggest picking up one of these to try, not only for the increased mass and the castability and all that, but mainly for the hookup percentage because of that hook there. This is a great feature. Alright, let's move on. Time to do a comparison here, everybody. We compared it against the original Lunker Frog. I'd like to show you it against two other very popular frogs in terms of size. So here's a copper. This is a live target. I think most fishermen out there who fish a frog are familiar with this frog. This is the 65T, which is their largest size. It's 2 5/8 inches. It also weighs 3/4 of an ounce. And if we look at these from the bottom, we have very similar profiles. It's more or less the same. In terms of the mass of the body and what the fish are seeing there, it's negligible. This one carries a little bit of a different shape, but overall the fish has the same impression of a sizable frog. What we have different, of course, is this element of the legs. It's interesting because a lot of people talk about copper's live target and how realistic they are, and they are when you look at them like this. You have great paint jobs, you have details and little specks of the eye making it look so alive, little bumps here and things. But if you look at it from the bottom, you have these hands which wrap around, but there's really no denying. You look at the two of these, this one to me just kind of looks like an oval with these strands. This looks like a frog. I mean, take away that hook there and a quick glance underwater, and that of course looks like a frog. Not only does it have the anatomically correct legs and the little flippers, it also has the hands, but you even have more shape to the body here. An actual bulge going to the narrower part of the head, which is what a real frog looks like. I'm not suggesting at all that the more correct frog in terms of design is going to get you more strikes. I'm new to these. I've been fishing this type of frog up until Lunkerhunt came out, and I've have an untold number of fish and strikes on all the these types of frogs that have just these kind of cylindrical bodies and these strand legs. But if you want to flip things up a little bit, show the fish something a little bit maybe different, maybe they're getting a little wary to this style of frog, the combat frog as well as the Lunkerhunt Lunker Frog are some good options. And I just wanted to show you guys what it looks like compared to this one. And another popular frog is this guy. It's a Booyah Pad Crasher. I like this guy a lot. Very different from the bottom though. This one really just kind of looks like a little oval. It doesn't look like a frog. Again, that doesn't bother the bass at all, but in terms of looks, the Combat Frog and Lunkerhunt really have it going on. They do a great job. As I'm looking at this, let me talk a little bit to you about the action of the lures. Yeah guys, looking at this Booyah Pad Crasher just reminded me of something, and it's also present to a degree in the Copper's Life Target, but much more so here. If you're a fan of being able to walk the dog with your frog, right? So a lure like this has two abilities, and I always like lures that could do a few things at once. You could twitch it along normally, no problem, but because of this shape, you see that kind of keel and the very slenderness, this thing was built to do one of these side-to-side walk-the-dog actions, right? And a lot of times the fish are really key in on that. I've had a lot of success working frogs in that manner exclusively. Something that you cannot do in the Combat Frog. You can try to do it, but it just is not going to happen. These legs like I said, remember this thing is hanging in the water like this. It's not on top, right? You really want something to be buoyant and on top because you want to minimize water resistance. If you're trying to do that walk the dog action, you really want it on top to go side to side. This lure is hanging down in the water, and so when you pull it, you're doing just that. You're just kind of splashing it and ushering it along. So in terms of that kind of action, just know what you're getting into, guys. It's an excellent lure, but it's one-dimensional in that regard versus some of these other lures, the Pad Crasher, and also you could do it easily with the Copper's Life Target. You have a traditional, just kind of scooting it along, and then you could do that walk the dog action, right? So the Combat Frog is going for realism over versatility of movement. Okay guys, next let's get it out on the water, show you some action and a little fish catching action. And before I do that though, just put it to you guys in summary. This is an excellent frog. What you're getting in the larger size is that 3/4 of an ounce. You're going to be able to hoist this thing a lot further. You have that very low stance in the water, which lends itself to the fish being able to slurp it down or just engulf it a lot easier. You have, and this is probably the main reason to try one of these things out, is you have this very, very wide bite to the hook angle, which makes a whole lot of sense, and I would like to see other manufacturers follow suit and maybe make their bodies just like this, a little bit larger up here to allow for that steeper angle. Lunkerhunt's the first that I see doing it, and I suspect that guys are going to have a little bit better hookup ratios using this kind of frog. So that's your next feature. And yeah, and like I said, mine out of the box, I don't know if this is just, because they're brand new or whatever, my hooks were perfectly acceptable, but they weren't sticky sharp. And again guys, in terms of action here, you're looking for realism. Working this, you could work it absolutely through the heavy cover, through the pads, through the slop, but where I think it really excels, because you are looking at a bait that's highly realistic, is in places where the fish have a clear look at it. So maybe not actually in the thick of the pads, but just on those edges of the pads and on those edges of the mats and the weed lines, where the fish can really appreciate the extra realism afforded to them by this lure. And maybe if they're getting wary of things like this and they've seen this 100 times, you give them a clean look at this, they're not going to be able to second guess that that's not a real frog. Again, from your stance, you can't walk the dog, but you do just have a super realistic looking frog in the water, and the kicking action on these legs is excellent. Little twitches and you have full extension of these legs as it's coming through the water, which you'll see here as I roll in some clips. And it's just an awesome product. It's a great frog. If you haven't tried out one of the original Lunker Frogs, definitely try one of these out. I think you'll enjoy this product. Alright everybody, let's take it to the water and see how it does. There we go. Fish on. It's a good surface right there. First cast, fish on. It's a pickerel. Fish on. There's a nice one. Combat frog, guys. Got it all down. Little fish. A little bit of a bigger frog. Fish on. With that one, guys. Combat frog. See, just a little guy, but he was able to take care of it. Just a little guy, Oh, woo, he just slurped it off the surface. Oh, come on. A lot of mess. Seems like a decent fish, too. Sure is. Here we go, guys. Combat frog. Got a nice fish here. Not a lot of slop. There we go. Woo. All right, guys. Let's see what this guy's weighing in at. Survey says 4.8. No, 4.8. Good solid fish right there. 4 pounds, 8 ounces. On the combat frog.